seconds. He's going to throw it. Howard leaps. He has it. Touchdown. Carolina back from the dead to tie the game with 2 seconds to go. Snap back, spot down. The kick is cleanly away. It is good.
And it's
Fowler with a
yes, sir.
54-yard field goal. And how about them Tar Heels? They do it.
Here's Kupak. Gives off to Amos. He's got it. He's Unbelievable. Unreal.
Jordan back to kick. It's blocked again. Picked up. It'll be a touchdown, Carolina, for Bracey Walker. He blocks his second punt and scores his second touchdown of the season. It's 14-13. Mr. Jordan beat Mr. Walker.
Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio, he's going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
This is the Heel Tough Blog Podcast on Spreaker.com. Welcome to the Heel Tough Blog Podcast 2018 Season Preview Show. I'm Anthony Pagnotta. With the Tar Heel football season just 2 days away, we asked the journalists closest to the team 5 simple questions to help us get a feel for just how the team will be able to respond from last season. Starting us off will be one of the newer guys to the Tar Heel beat. As many of you know, News and Observer's Andrew Carter covered his last Carolina football game last fall. Taking his place this season on the Tar Heel beat will be Jonathan Alexander, and we got a chance to sit down and hear what he thinks about the team he will be covering this season.
Okay. All right, man. So, sitting here with Jonathan Alexander of News and Observer, of course, the guy that will be covering the Tar Heels this season, taking over for Andrew Carter. So, we're at that time of the year, finally. Tar Heel football season is actually here. So now it's time to discuss this team, what exactly this team's going to be, because fall camp is over. So now when we look at it, I think where we got to start is offensively. When we take a look at this team, last year was probably the worst offensive year that we've had under Larry Fedora. I think everybody can agree with that. The question is, how does this team return to that offensive, I wouldn't say powerhouse, but really, at least during the last 2 years prior to last year, a team that was winning with offense. And 19 wins in 2 years was pretty good. How did they get back to that level of offense that they saw during that time?
I think there are 3 things that you have to look at. First, where UNC struggled. And they were particularly where UNC struggled last year. And it started with the quarterback play. Mm-hmm. And you had Chad Surratt and Nathan Elliott and Brandon Robinson, who all struggled. They were all, I would say, inexperienced. They had accuracy issues. So this year, Nathan Elliott has played. He has a lot more experience. He has to be a lot better than he was this year, even though he got those 2 out of 3 wins and played well against Miami. He has to be really good this year. And second, the offensive line play. You got a brand new offensive line. Only one returner in Charlie Head. Mm-hmm. These guys have to gel well, and they have to give Nathan Elliott time in the pocket. He can't be running for his life back there. He's not mobile like Chad Surratt is. So they have to give him pocket. They have to give him time. They also have to open up holes for the running backs. The running back core is really talented this year. You got Michael Carter and you have Jordan Brown, who performed well last year for UNC. Mm-hmm. And then you got the addition of Antonio Williams, Ohio State transfer, who everybody is raving about, says he's going to be good. So if you give those guys holes, they can run through it. And then last, you have Anthony Ratliff-Williams. Everybody loves him. He's looking good in summer camp. But who's going to be the guy outside of Anthony Ratliff-Williams who's going to help him whenever he's double-teamed? Somebody has to be a consistent presence outside of Ratliff-Williams. And I think those past UNC teams have had really good wide receivers, been stacked at the wide receiver, so they can throw the ball in a really good quarterback who can hit him. And in order for them to have been good, they had to have good offensive line too. So you have to have all those three things, I believe.
So, the defense last year took a step forward. I think, that there were some signs at times that the run defense was starting to come around. How does this defense take another step forward this season?
Well, they're really – I think I was looking, and I think 11 players are returning who started at least one game. And they've got to use that experience and that heart that they played with last year, take it into this year. I think the defense is going to be the strongest part of this team because of this experience. That defensive line, you got Jalen Doughton, Aaron Crawford, Malik Carney, Tommen Fox. That defensive line has the potential to be special when they all get back. Of course, some of them are suspended, but they're staggered. When they all get back, that defensive line has the potential to be special, and they like the depth behind them as well. And then you got your secondary. You have returners like J.K. Britt, K.J. Sales, who they really like, and Miles Dorn. Mm-hmm. And then you got your linebacker, Cole Holcomb, and Jonathan Smith. They like him. So they just have to perform like they know how to perform. I think they will because of that experience. And I think the offense just has to keep the defense off the field. Like, you can't, go 3 and out and then have a defense come back on the field and get tired, and then the opposing offense wears them down. So I think you got to give your defense a chance and let them perform.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I always felt like, that was kind of a problem, especially during the Vic Koenig era where, the defense was kind of rushed back out there too quick because of the pace of the offense. And, yeah, last year that was one of the main issues as well because the offense was so ineffective. There's always players that end up emerging in fall camp. Who is that guy that going into this year, just from maybe being out there at some of these fall practices that you think is going to take a step forward and have a big year that maybe a lot of people aren't talking about?
I think a lot of people aren't talking about, a lot of people are talking about Malik Carney and Anthony Ratliff-Williams, and I think those two players are going to have big years for UNC. But a lot of people aren't talking about Jalen Doughton, which I'm surprised about. Jalen Doughton had about 8 tackles for losses. He's a senior now, huge guy, 6'6", 300 pounds, had 8 tackles for losses last year and 3 sacks. I can easily see him taking a step up and being a big factor, and I'm really surprised that people haven't been talking about him really.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that may be because of the injury, but I think that's an interesting one. He was a guy that really, in the snaps that he saw last year, he dealt with some injury issues and also had a couple of penalties that I think a lot of people probably saw as one of the reasons why Strobridge took over for him for a little while. But
I remember that penalty.
Yeah, so I agree. I definitely agree that, I think he's one of those guys to definitely keep an eye on. And just about anybody on that defensive line is a great pick. So,
Sure.
What is your official record prediction as of right now for the Tar Heels? Like, if you had to look at that schedule, where do you see them this season?
So I look down at the schedule. I haven't done let me see my predictor. And they have a pretty favorable home schedule. I think a lot of it depends on who's going to come out. But because of the uncertainty on offense, and I don't know how these suspensions will affect them, I'm seeing them going, I believe, 6-6.
Okay.
They have the potential to do better, depending on how these home games play out, and if they can overcome these suspensions. But I'm looking at about 6-6. But I won't be surprised if they finish 7-5. I'll be a little surprised if they finish 8-4, but I won't be shocked. And if things just go bad, they could finish even worse than 6-6. But I'm going to say 6-6.
Okay. Yeah. And then, I mean, the final question, I think this is, the one that ultimately a lot of people are going to be looking at when it comes to the, season ending. That's going to be the storyline. Is Larry Fedora the head coach of this team in 2019 when we start the season?
I think it depends a lot on, how well he does this year. I think his buyout is pretty sizable that they wouldn't want to do that unless something happened with the program where they got in trouble and he just finished terribly and the public it was just too much for the public where they would be calling for his firing. I don't see right now him being fired, but things can change quickly depending on the public perception. But as of right now, I don't see him being fired. I don't think they'll be that bad this year, and I think he'll earn himself another year.
All right, Jonathan Alexander of News and Observer, thanks for coming on with us, man. This was fantastic, and yeah, definitely, keep up the work you guys are doing down there, and we'll hopefully talk to you sometime down the line. Okay?
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
All right, man.
From one rookie to another, Chris Trenkle takes over for Chappell Fowler this season as the sports editor over at the Daily Tar Heel, and that means early in the year, much of his focus will be on the Tar Heel football team. Here's what he had to say when we spoke to him on Wednesday.
Yeah, man. So thanks for stepping on, and now we can definitely talk a little bit of Tar Heel football. Definitely excited to have you on. We've had some of the different guys on, and you're one of the newer guys. So talk first really quickly about the experience of being able to cover the Tar Heel football team this season.
Right. Funnily enough, I was with Daily Tar Heel last year, but I didn't get an opportunity to cover the team in person. It's something that I'm really looking forward to for this year. It's been really interesting, covering media availability, covering the press conference following the announcement of the 13 guys that were suspended, and covering right after training camp. The biggest thing for me, Anthony, is that this team has a lot of optimism. This is not the same group that was there last year. It's a very different mindset. Everybody's looking forward to just getting out there, starting out the gate fresh, getting a win. So that's something that's been really interesting to watch, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that the coaching staff has kind of been telling us. Larry said it last night on his show with Jones Angel on the Tar Heel Sports Network that, he's never really seen a bunch that's come in this revved up for training camp and ready to go. So that's good to hear, that these guys are staying optimistic after a 3-9 season that for most programs, could be something that could, deter these guys. I want to start by asking you about the offensive side of the football. Last year it was easily the worst year offensively under Larry Fedora. And, I think that was in part because of injuries and consistencies on the offensive side of the football. But, the question is, how does this team get back to being that type of offense that can win this team games? Maybe not as good as the 2015 offense or 16 offense, but just a unit that, you can trust can get you enough points to maybe put you in a bowl game.
Right. Well, the big thing for me is taking as much pressure as you can off of Nathan Elliott. He's still a guy that is relatively raw in terms of game experience. He threw for 10 touchdowns last year, only 5 interceptions, but he's still a pretty fresh face out there. So I think it's important to really rely on this scout running attack that they have. Antonio Williams, Jordan Brown, Michael Carter's going to be out week 1, but when he returns, he's going to provide a big boost. He obviously led the team in rushing touchdowns last year. And then Javonte Williams, who's a first year, is another guy that's really impressed people in camp. A lot of people are talking about. And then, obviously, Anthony Ratliff-Williams. He's a guy that they talk about the players in every practice. He makes a play where people are just like, wow. I mean, this guy is special. We saw it last year, 35 catches, 630 yards, 6 receiving touchdowns. And I've talked to him a lot. I've talked to his father. I've talked to his high school coach. I mean, this guy is hungry. He's ready to go out there and just, prove it, improve his draft stock. And he's going to be a big part of this team's success. I think if the team can just rely on the rushing attack, if they can rely on Anthony Ratliff-Williams, Daz Newsome is going to have a big year, I think, after a solid season last year. Bo Corrales, when he comes back from suspension, is going to be big too. So just taking as much pressure off of Elliott, I think, is really key, especially early on.
something that should definitely help that is the fact that the defense might be the most talented that we've seen in Chapel Hill in a while. You know, they took a step forward, I think, overall as a unit last year. The defensive backfield, I think, may have taken a little bit of a step back, but I thought overall as a unit, they were they were better than they were the year before. The question is, how do they take that next step forward this season?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think the biggest thing has to be run defense. The pass defense was not really bad at all last year. You're only giving up roughly under 250 yards a game, something like that. But when you're giving up over 200 yards a game on the ground, it really makes it tough. So I think the biggest thing is the linebacking core. Dominique Ross and John Smith are two other guys that Fedora has harped on that have really played well, and obviously Cole Holcomb, outside linebacker. That guy's led the team in tackles last season, had 93. I think he could very well break that 100 threshold this season.
Mm-hmm.
And then one group I'm really interested in is the secondary. Obviously you got KJ Sales back there. Patrice Rene is a guy that a lot of the teammates talk about how talented he is if he can just put it all together on a consistent basis. CJ Kottman has really stepped forward. I think they're expecting big things from him, potentially playing as a nickel back. And J.K. Britt and Miles Dorn, at the safety positions are going to be really, really solid, I think. I think they'll have improved from last season. Obviously the biggest question mark is the defensive line, which was expected to be maybe the biggest strength of the team. Jalen Dalton's been injured throughout camp. We'll see how much he plays on Saturday. The team does have Tamon Fox and Malik Carney for this week. So I think just moving forward, if guys can step up with the absence of Aaron Crawford, Jeremiah Clark is one guy that the teammates have been excited about. Alan Cater's another guy. So if these players can step up too, this defense has potential to be really solid.
Yeah, you look at the camp standouts, and as you said, Anthony Ratliff-Williams is a guy that is always getting talked about. Antonio Williams is a guy that we've seen up there a lot. Who is the guy right now that you're kind of seeing? Maybe it's a guy that you've seen when you've been out there, or maybe it's a guy that some of these other players are talking about that really the media is not really talking about a ton, that you think will be a household name by the end of the season.
Well, that's a very good question. I think one guy who, at least early on, could really impress some people is Javonte Williams, the first-year running back. But, somebody else who – I know Daz Newsome's getting some attention, but I think he should be getting even more attention than he is. This guy really, really could be good this year, as a possession receiver, as a guy that can get a lot of first downs for this team. I think by the time the season is done, he and Anthony Ratliff-Williams will definitely be one of the better 1-2 punches for receiver in the ACC. And once Corrales comes back, it also just takes some attention away from Newsome. But I really expect big things from him, and based on what I've heard from Anthony Ratliff-Williams, he's impressed too. I think that's a big sign.
As we sit just a few days away from the season, I don't know if you're one of those guys that likes to give record predictions or not. But if you had to, what would you say at this point you foresee the record being for the Tar Heels this season?
Right. Well, I think predictions are a lot of fun. They usually make me look bad, but
they make us all look bad. So
yeah, right. I don't see any reason why this team doesn't get to a bowl game this year.
Okay.
I think 7-5 or 6-6 is definitely attainable.
Mm-hmm.
8 wins might be stretching it, but look, they have consistent play right now under quarterback, really good running backs. The offensive line is a little bit better than I think people are giving it credit for because it is less experienced, but you have one of the top playmakers in the ACC in ARW. The guy is so talented. And then defensively, I think that the defense will give a lot of help for this team. What's going to, I think, really dictate the path of this season is how the team plays against Cal. Not necessarily going out there and, making it a must-win game, but, you want to just see the team going out there playing well and at least making it a really close game, which, you know, I think is definitely possible. I think the team could potentially win the game, and I know they've really been looking forward to this game. I mean, they've been talking about it all camp.
So you've got the team making a bowl game, 6-6 or 7-5. So the question is, when we start the 2019 season, basically when we're sitting in the same spot that we're sitting today, do you think that Larry Fedora is the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels?
Yes, I think Larry Fedora will be the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. I know he's ruffled some feathers with his CTE comments, but Bubba Cunningham likes Larry Fedora. It's his guy. He got a big extension. It would be a $16 million buyout for the university to fire him. And you know, I think, especially if the team makes a bowl game this year, I think people can forget a lot from last season with all the injuries that the team had and so forth. But he's got a really good recruiting class coming in. It's top 25, and I think people are willing to see what happens this year, and I see the year going at least decently well. I think Fedora will keep his job going into next season.
All right, Chris Trenkle of the Daily Tar Heel. Tell them where they can follow you at, man. You're a little bit new, so let's get some of those followers for you.
Right, absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Trenkle2. So that's ChrisTrenkle2. And you can also find us on Daily Tar Heel. We have our football preview coming out on Friday. We're very excited about it. We've got a lot of positional breakdowns. I've got an Anthony Ratliff-Williams feature that is a really touching story, I think. You know, I've spent a lot of time talking with him, his dad, his high school coach, Brian Hales. I'm really looking forward to it. But I really appreciate you having me on, Anthony. I'm happy to come on anytime.
All right, man. Hey, great to hear. Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you on back down the line. And yeah, thanks for finding some time for us. I know you're a busy man, so keep it up. And I know you're looking forward to this season. So we'll definitely be in touch. All right, man.
All right, sounds good. Take care, man.
All right, you too.
Although he may not be the sports editor at the Daily Tar Heel anymore, Chappell Fowler still knows his Tar Heel football and is still a part of the Daily Tar Heel. Tuesday gave us a chance to sit down and chat with him about how he thinks the 2018 season will go for the Tar Heels.
Chappell Fowler of the Daily Tar Heel checking in with us, guys, for the season preview. Yeah, I'm doing well, man. How about you, man?
Doing well. Been to a few practices recently. Excited for the season to start. Like I said, there's a ton of interesting stuff to follow. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, big season of storylines. I know. Were you at the press conference yesterday that Coach Fedora held?
I was not, but I did keep up with it. I had class, but I saw basically everything that happened there.
Yeah, I mean, I think to this point, what seems to be the most interesting thing that's, I guess, come out of that, maybe not necessarily directly come out of it, is that we still don't have a depth chart at the moment. You know, do you think there's a specific reason why maybe we don't have one released at this point?
Yeah, so I noticed that. I saw some tweets about that. So I remember last year at the start of the year there was a depth chart, but it really did not update over the first 3 weeks or so. I think the beginning depth chart last year had Chaz and Nathan and Brandon Harris all listed as starting quarterback, like you said,
right.
Chaz Surratt or Nathan Elliott or Brandon Harris. So it was a depth chart, but a lot of those spots had that or, and I noticed that it wasn't really being updated week by week. So I don't really think much of that it wasn't available in week one. It just doesn't seem like it's something that they really keep up with too much in terms of updating it week by week. So I don't think that's a big secrecy thing or anything.
Gotcha. Yeah. I guess maybe with the suspensions, what I know, I had Sam Doughton on from Argyle Report yesterday, and he told me he thinks that's probably There's still some battles they're kind of working out there, so maybe that's where they're trying to go. So, but yeah, I just found it kind of interesting. So yeah, let's jump into the 5 questions that I've been asking you guys, all the different journalists to give me their opinions on, and it starts with the offensive side of the ball. Last year, this offense was nowhere near the offenses that we've seen under Larry Fedora. I still think the talent is there. I really don't think that was the issue. I just think injuries that just kept adding up as time went by, that's kind of what took the life out of this offense. And I also think that Brandon Harris was part of what took the life out of this offense. He's gone. Hopefully the injuries are gone. How do you think this unit returns to that elite unit? Maybe not even up to that standard, but how do you think they at least return to a unit that the team can rely on to help them win games like the previous 2 seasons before last year?
Well, I think quarterback consistency, or just the consistency of knowing who your starter is going to be, is huge. Regardless of who you as a fan or a media member think is the better of the two between Surratt and Elliott, just the consistency of having one guy at that position is going to be huge, I think, at least for the first 4 games. Probably in simplest terms, it's just to get the balls into the hands of their playmakers like as much as possible. And that is cliche, but it's really what worked last year. You saw Michael Carter had a few huge games whenever he got the touches. Anthony Ratliff-Williams obviously had some huge games when he got the touches. They started to get him the ball in really inventive ways late in the season without being too like extra gadgety, because sometimes the phrase you'll get too cute. Like a team will try to run some wide receiver pass when they don't need to. I thought they did a really good job late in the season of getting him the ball in those situations. So really, I think as long as Ratliff-Williams and the running back trio, or maybe even a foursome, because we're hearing so much about Javonte Williams now, as much as those 4 guys, 5 guys are getting the ball, that's going to be super helpful. And that's going to take, obviously, the pressure off these younger guys that we're hearing a lot about. Newsome, even like Carl Tucker, tight end, not a young guy, but another guy who might break out.
Right.
Just get those primary playmakers the touches, and that opens up a lot of other opportunities, open space, less pressure for some of these guys that they want to break out to have that chance.
Yeah, you mentioned 2 guys right there that I really think could have breakout years. Daz Newsome, we saw him in the game against Louisville last year, and then he kind of just never really reappeared on that same type of stage. And then Carl Tucker, man, he's had so many bad breaks with injuries. I mean, he's shown that he can do what is necessary, and I think he's probably the most consistent threat receiving wise. I think Fritz is really more that red zone guy where Tucker can kind of do everything all over the field. But yeah, that is interesting for sure. Now looking at the defensive side of the ball, last year they seemed to take a good step in the right direction. I don't know how much of a step that really was, but to me, it was improved from what we have seen. This year, we return a lot of that talent. There were some injuries there that got some guys some experience, and they are really, really excited about the guys that they brought in as freshmen. So, as of right now, what do you think this defense has to do to take that next step and potentially be that group that can win this team some games in crucial moments?
Yeah, so I'm actually doing like a preview on the secondary for like our football preview, and so I'm looking at the stats from like the last 3 years, let's say, of their pass defense, and I think it's pretty easy to forget, but in that 8-5 season, they were, I think, first in the nation in touchdowns allowed per game. Passing wise, I think they only allowed like 0.8. Their passing yardage was 8 or something like that, and then the year before that, the ACC championship appearance year, it was somewhere in like the 12th for pass defense, and this past year, they kind of took a step back. I think they were in like the 60s, but that's still somewhat comfortably like your upper half of the FBS spectrum. So last year was the run defense that really, that was where the yardage was given up. Their averages were in the hundreds for that, like is where they ranked. So yeah, run defense, of the 2, I guess that's the more pressing issue. And to make that happen, there's a defensive line that's obviously was deep, but now is less deep with suspensions, injury to Crawford and everything. So the onus really falls on the replacements in that group and maybe more consistency at the linebacking position. Obviously, Holcomb has a lot of experience there, but maybe this is a year where John Smith, in like a full-on starting position, unlike last year, has a chance to solidify himself. And Fedora mentioned a few young guys, I think, like Gimmel and Flint, that could make contributions there, too. So I think really just team effort by the linebackers and the defensive line to try to shore up that run defense, and that obviously helps pass defense and vice versa.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you are definitely right about that, and I think that is something that people do need to realize. While I think the overall defense was a little bit better last year, the passing defense did have their struggles, especially early in the season. And I think you're right though, and I really like a lot of these. To me, the true freshmen that they bring in that group, from what I'm hearing, they're going to have a massive impact. Like they're saying right now, Trey Morrison could potentially start at the nickel corner, which means he would beat out a guy that started there last year, and Miles Woolfolk. That's really good. People need to understand that. And then Bryson Richardson was getting raved about for a while. You look at some other guys that are probably going to have some impacts, like C.J. Cotman, who is battling Patrice Renee. So I'm encouraged by that secondary. And then on the defensive line, there will be some guys out, but with the staggered suspensions, I think they might be okay. The biggest person that returns, maybe on the entire team now, that people have to realize, going in, this is important that we bring him back, is Tyler Powell, because he can play both D end and D tackle. He's done both, and for now, they're probably going to have to move him back inside the D tackle with the injury to Crawford. So, I think you're right. This defense just, it starts up front, and that's going to be the key. Getting pressure on the quarterback and being able to be in the backfield on running downs is going to be important. So, every year there's these breakout guys that everybody wants to talk about. There's, this year, some of the names that have come to mind are, of course, Nathan Elliott with how he's performed in practice, as well as Antonio Williams. Who's the guy right now that you don't think anyone's really talking about, but that he could really sneak up on people and have a really good season and become that name that everybody knows by the end of the year?
Yeah, that's a good question. So some of the things that we've started to do in practice, just like obviously because we can't see the scrimmages, we just take the time to ask whoever we talk to, like who stood out to you, and get their point of view. So as I'm talking to everybody for this secondary story, both Miles Dorn and KJ Sales are mentioning TJ Cotman.
Okay.
And he is in competition for the 2 spot with Patrice Renee. It seems like Patrice has the upper hand in that battle, but they're both saying great things about him. And, of course, quarterbacks are always rotating. I'm not sure if he can play nickel or not, but I just never heard his name come up before. And the fact that those two, important, good starters were mentioning his name along with Patrice Renee at competition, the 2 spot, and saying that really any of those guys could step in and play for them. That was just a name that stood out to me because I hadn't thought of it, but they obviously think really highly of him.
Yeah, well, that's definitely good to hear. And I thought last year, he was a little bit of a special teams contributor, but not massive. So I think, there's a real chance he could take a step forward. So if you look right now, heading into the season, I don't know if you're that type of guy that likes to do the, predictions, the record predictions, but if you had to guess, what would be that win total that you think this team is going to be at when the season comes to an end?
Well, I'll start off by saying my record predictions are always horrible. But just taking a look at the schedule, there are some winnable games. There's some hard games. There's definitely some trap games. I think after a 3-9 year, expectations aren't low, but they are kind of lessened because, it's in college football, there's ebb and flow. Like, you're going to have good years and bad years. There's the attrition of players and coaching staff. It's hard to maintain that consistent program year after year, and that's obviously why the coaches that do that get paid the big money. I took a look at the schedule before the call, and I think a 5-7 or a 6-6 sounds really realistic to me.
Okay.
But I think within both of those records, there's going to be 1 or 2 games where they're right there and aren't able to. I know we saw that a lot last year. It's something that they talked about a lot at ACC kickoff and through the camp, finishing those games, and I think that's something that might take another year of ironing out. But that 5-7 or 6-6 could easily become a 7-5 if they're able to pull out a few of those.
All right, so 5-7 or 6-6. The question then becomes, at the start of the 2019 season, right now as you sit here with the prediction that you have in hand, do you think that Larry Fedora is the head coach of the Tar Heels at the start of the 2019 season?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Pretty confidently, personally. I've never heard a player say a bad thing or much frustration. And obviously he has that contract through, I think, 2020. And I've heard nothing that would make me feel like they're losing confidence in him. I mean, he's obviously set a lot of program records, like wins in back-to-back seasons and all those offensive records. And if you just look at UNC's sports overall, they have a pretty good track record with keeping around their coaches. Their fencing coach, 51 years. Anson Dorrance, of course, I think he's in year 40. Hatchell's in her year 30s. Coach Williams has obviously been around for a long time. Any coach really. I think they have like one or two new coaches in the past 2 years. And it just seems like that's something that the athletic department, Bobby Cunningham especially, emphasizes, like just putting that trust in and having some patience as well.
All right, man. Hey, we'll let you get back to your homework, of course, because we know you are a student, so got to multitask. But hey, man, I really appreciate you carving out some time for us to come on here and just give us some of this information for the season. I know we're all excited, we're ready to go, so I'm glad you could be a part of the preview podcast, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you reaching out about it. I'm always happy to talk. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the mashup of everybody else's opinions, too. Should be a fun one.
All right, man. Yeah, for sure. So you take care, and we'll definitely have to talk to you down the line. All right, man?
You got it, man. Have a good night.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Rookie status might be a bit offensive to Sam Doughton of the Argyle Report. Although he may be new to the Tar Heel football beat, Sam has jumped right in and quickly become one of the top follows when it comes to Tar Heel football. We sat down with him on Monday to get his take on the Heels' upcoming season.
Yeah, so I thought, definitely, great to have you back on, man. You do such a great job. Yeah, over at the over at Argyle Report. So yeah, dude, had to get you back on, and you went out there. Today was the first press conference from Larry. Just starting out, little off script. What was the biggest thing that you kind of took away from today's press conference, if anything?
Well, it was an interesting presser because normally when we go in, there's like the stack of game notes that we picked up, and today everyone picked it up and immediately flipped to try to find the 2 deep, and the 2 deep was not in the list yet, and Coach Larry on the podium today said that he's not quite done with it yet. Basically, he's still got to decide a couple battles. I think that right guard battle, Billy Ross and William Barnes is one of them, and a couple of the backup battles as well. Get that coveted 2 deep spot. Particularly backup quarterbacks one. A lot of people have a lot of questions on. He just had he's got to spend the last couple days of practice to figure it out before they head out west. But it's an interesting position he's in because of all the suspensions and other things, and players are getting hurt right now early on in the season. Apparently, we got a chance to see a lot of freshmen play, and so I think that's exciting on one end, maybe a little bit of concern on the other. But they're in a good spot mentally right now, and it was sort of just the coaches are feeling things out, and the media is feeling things out right now, and sort of nobody really entirely knows what to expect for this team. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be a constant theme going on. So there's so many variables with this, where this season could be really good or it could be really bad again, and we don't really know how it's going to go until they play on the field.
Well, yeah, let's find out what you think about this team. So it starts with the offense. Last year, the worst offense that they've had under Larry Fedora by a large margin. And now this year, some of the same pieces, but there are also some new guys that have really stepped up so far in spring and fall camp. What does this team have to do to get back to that dynamic type of offense that they had the two seasons prior to last year?
So for me, I think it's all about consistency. I think the main reason the offense struggled to click a while last year is there were just so many parts moving in and out due to all the injuries. Injuries on the offensive line, injuries out wide at wide receiver, and the running back was pretty stable, I guess, but quarterback was constantly switching in and out. Mm-hmm. And so nobody had any time to really find rhythm as a unit, which is such a big deal in the type of offense, Coach Fedora runs, the no-huddle spread. They do a lot of quick fire plays, a lot of, quick reads and go and everything else. And so, just getting that consistency, getting a set of 11, 12, 13 guys that you're going to have in there almost every single play and, being able to go as quick as you possibly can, that's going to be a big deal. And I think assuming, people can stay healthy, you're going to see them getting back to it. And I'm pretty optimistic. I think Nathan Elliott showed a lot of promise towards the end of the season last year and is only going to get better now that he has a more consistent group on the side. They got tons of talent out on the wings with the wide receiver spots, and they got two great options with Brandon Fritz and Carl Tucker at tight end. Mm-hmm. They got 3 or 4 great running back options. So they got enough talent to execute everywhere. It's just a matter of there being enough reps with everyone around for them to feel comfortable with one another.
It may also help that the defense is in a pretty good spot. They took a step last year. What do they have to do to take that next step this year?
Well, for me, it's all about, the defensive line being more consistent. I think a lot of the problems that this defense historically has had, not stopping the run and also giving up big pass plays, is in large part due to the fact that the defensive line does not get enough push necessarily on the line. And this is a unit, even with the suspensions and the injury to Aaron Crawford, still has a ton of experience and is very upperclassman heavy. And this is the year that they really need to step up and sort of take ownership of, like, we're going to be a good defensive team this year because we're going to just beat you off the ball and make teams uncomfortable, make them not be able to run up the middle, make them not be able to get deep into their pass routes and be able to bust open those big plays. Because, the secondary is boomer bust and the linebackers are young, and so the defensive line has really got to step up to make this defense, capable for this team and really make a difference.
Yeah, I think coming into the season, everybody's talking about guys like Anthony Ratliff-Williams, Nathan Elliott, Aaron Crawford, but there's some of these guys that are breaking out. Who is that guy right now that really no one is talking about, but you feel might have a big impact for the team this season?
Well, a couple things. On sort of an off-the-beaten-trail path, I think William Sweet, the offensive tackle, really has a chance to do something special. He's a redshirt junior. He's been biding his time in the program for quite some time, but he's got that size to be the elite player, the elite tackle that this offense needs. And I think he's going to finally have the chance to show what he can do. Completely healed back from the injury last year and really get a chance to shine on the offensive line. I think people are going to be very impressed with him overall. And sort of a more skill position thing, something that most people have been. I think everyone needs to keep an eye on Javonte Williams. He's been getting a lot of praise from the coaching staff and other players about what he's doing as a true freshman. And with Michael Carter out early on this season, you're going to get a chance to see him play with Antonio and Jordan Brown. And I suspect that he will get a chance to really show what he can do.
I've been really encouraged by what I've heard about him. And, I saw his tape coming out of one of the smaller schools that, you can recruit from in Wallace Rose Hill, which was a 1A school that kind of moved up to a 2A, I think, 2 years ago. So, yeah, that's impressive that he's come in and made such a great impact early on. That's great to hear. So what do you think right now, if you had to make a prediction, what would be your official record prediction for this year's team?
Well, I had to break out the schedule itself to make sure I didn't second-guess myself. So I'll just go through game by game.
Okay.
I think originally at Cal was a toss-up with the suspensions. I think it's probably a loss.
Okay.
At ECU, I think it's probably a win even with the suspensions because I think ECU is just terrible, and Scotty Montgomery will be out before the 6th game this season. You can record that down. Defending national champs UCF, I think was probably a toss-up with suspensions. I think there's also probably a loss.
Okay.
And I think we probably beat Pitt at home because we'll have enough people back by that point. At Miami, probably a loss. At Virginia Tech, Virginia Tech at home, probably a loss. Having beaten Syracuse on the road, beating Georgia Tech at home, losing to Duke on the road, beating Western, and then losing to State. So it goes out to 5-7, which seems low, but I think if they didn't have multiple players suspended early on, it could easily be 7-5. And even in those games, I think a lot of the games that I think they might lose are toss-ups. Like, I think Duke on the road is probably a toss-up. I think, Virginia Tech at home, is going to be a close one. Cal is going to be a close one. UCF at home is going to be a close one. So there's a path to 9-3 and a really solid bounce-back season. But there's also a path to, 3-9 or 4-8 or something, not good at all. And it's really just going to come down to execution and also, how the other teams in the conference are doing. Because it's just a really jumbled coastal behind Miami right now.
Yeah, I think, you're 100% right, and you're kind of along those same lines as everybody else. That opening to the season is extremely important. And right now, I think in order to make a bowl game, 3-1 is kind of where you want to be. You can be 2-2, but then you're going to put a little bit of pressure on you. So yeah, I kind of agree. Now here's the big question. You said they're 5-7. Do you think that Larry Fedora then is the head coach of the team in 2019?
Well, yeah, I was chatting with Patrick James at Go Heels before the presser today, and I pointed out, Coach Fedora's entering year 7, and there's only been 3 Tar Heel coaches to ever make it 10 years. I'm going to Wikipedia that real quick,
right?
To double check on that. But just sort of while I'm looking that up, talking through that, like it's people don't stick around here for a long time for whatever reason,
right?
And some of it's people move on to quote unquote bigger jobs like Mac Brown.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but also historically success has never been long lived here, which I think is unfortunate. Let's see. Looking at this, Bill Dooley made it 10 years, 67 to 77. Mac Brown made it 9. Dick Crum made it 9. So yeah, I mean, Fedora's getting close to that number, but I think if he goes 5-7 this year, I don't think he'll be around next year. And I'll tell you that right now. I think he very easily could be here next year if he, goes 7-6, counting that bowl win or whatever. And people are gonna be like, oh, well, he had the injuries, and this year, he's getting back to it and had those suspensions to deal with.
Right.
But it's gonna be tough for him, and he's gonna have to win a lot of those toss-up games, which may or may not come down to coaching. And he was talking today. One of his last questions in the press conference today was, "Is he preparing for the season any different now after going 3-9?" And his answer was, he pretty much wasn't. He's always the same nervous wreck he had before every season. But he's got to win these toss-up games to get in there. And I think, based on my it still feels too early prediction for the season, I think he probably won't be here. Which is, puts the program in an interesting spot, given that there's been so much turnover in coaching. There's only 3 coaches in the ACC that have been at their schools longer than Larry Fedora. I think it's Dabo Swinney, David Cutcliffe, and God, who's the third one? Paul Johnson over at Georgia Tech.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the only 3 coaches in the ACC that have been at their schools longer than Larry Fedora has, which is kind of remarkable to think about, because at least for me, it feels like Coach Fedora just got here.
Right.
In some ways.
I feel like Steve Adazio's been at Boston College for a little while too, though.
Yeah, no, Adazio's, I think, even with him. I think they both.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. Maybe that's what it is. But yeah, you're right, and I agree 100%. I think really what last year did, that kind of balanced out that 11-3 year. But you look at it, and right now he's like a 7-6, 6-7 type coach. Makes a bowl game, and then it's kind of a swing back and forth there. So yeah, I totally agree. Crucial season for him, and yeah, if he goes 5-7, I think that's that number. If you are 6-6 and in a bowl game, you're probably safe. If you're 5-7, it's probably an entirely different story.
And it's crazy how things can swing like that. Because I think there's been this talk all the time about UNC being sort of a sleeping giant football-wise, and what should Tar Heel fans' expectations be for the program. And I think if you talk to most people, they're going to be like, if we're making a bowl every year, and then every once in a while we have a 10-win season, I think most people are going to be happy with it. And I think Coach Fedora can coach here a really long time, if that's the standard that he sets for himself. But this is really a make or break year to get back into that rhythm necessarily. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into that, but he hasn't done himself some of the favors in the off season with just various different things, from the CTE stuff to other things there. But I don't know, he seemed comfortable. He didn't seem any different than the past right now, and he's got a good chance to make a good statement on the road to Berkeley this week. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the team turns out.
Yeah, you're right. I think probably coming off of last year in the immediate aftermath when the season was over, I would have probably said back in December he could. Yeah, I think he could probably survive another 5-7, maybe even 4-8. It would have been close. But with the struggles on the recruiting trail, I mean, right now you look at the class; it's ranked 64th in the entire country, 13th in the ACC, and you've only got 11 commits in the entire class. You're getting beat in your home state, not only by NC State and Duke, you're getting beat by Wake Forest and ECU. And then, yeah, you mentioned, the comments that he made. I think that really that made his margin for error pretty much zero. So it's put him in a tough spot. But, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's amazing to think that really, I mean, you go back and I would say probably the Virginia Tech game when we played them during the hurricane that rolled in. Before that, I mean, you think about where his job security was. He was probably one of the safest coaches in the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
And now, we're a bad year away from having a new coach. So it's amazing. So do you mind really quick? If he does end up getting fired, who are some of those names that you would immediately kind of throw out there on the table to try to go after?
I mean, I don't know. I think Scott Satterfield at App State is an interesting type of figure. And, he's been extremely consistent at App, winning 10 games every year pretty much. And, I mean, obviously it's in the Sun Belt, but, he made the bump up from FCS to FBS with them. And they've been as successful as any, group of 5 program in the country in that time. Maybe not necessarily that, big time experience we might be looking for UNC, but he does recruit the state well. He knows all the, North Carolina connections and can, slip over to that Tennessee side a little bit. So I think he'd be an interesting figure to look at. I don't necessarily think they would look that way. I don't think that's necessarily the way Bubba Cunningham would operate the coaching search process. But, I think if I were running it, he'd be my first pick.
All right.
And, beyond that, I kind of like to see, somebody like a Lane Kiffin or something like that, assuming Florida Atlantic does well again this year.
Right.
There's nothing that says UNC football maybe to make that jump into being, one of the best programs in the country that people think it has the potential to be, might need to go outside the box a little bit and do something a little less conventional. But, I think perhaps maybe a defensive-minded coach wouldn't be bad either after, the defensive struggles for, all but 1 year basically in the Fedora era, and even that year wasn't that great.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's really, really strange in a lot of ways. And so those are just a couple names. I haven't thought too much about it because obviously there's still a lot to look at.
Right.
And I'm looking back at that 2016 season, and I'd say that turning point was probably the loss on the road to Duke. Because UNC didn't get blown out against Virginia Tech, but you sort of chalk that to the hurricane. Then they beat Miami on the road, beat Virginia, beat Georgia Tech. Pretty handily in those last 2 games. Then you go and lay an egg on the road to your biggest rival on a Friday night.
Yep.
And then come back and lose the state at home and then lose in the Sun Bowl by 2 points. And, a season that could have very easily ended with you in the top 10, you end up unranked. That's a tough draw. You go from, that season could very easily have been, 10-3 or 11-2 or something. And you might be fighting for the Coastal Division Championship again. And then all of a sudden you're 8-5 and you lose Mitch Trubisky. And then the next season everyone gets hurt and you get 3-9 and your seat's feeling pretty hot right now. But the good news for him is that he's got a bunch of winnable games on his schedule. So if he wins those games, he's in good shape.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not like he's got an impossible task ahead of him. It's very achievable for him. So that's for Tar Heel fans, for, Fedora fans, if you like him a lot, that's a good thing to see.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. And, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, that Duke game was one of those ones that, we felt like we should have won. That's pretty much been what the losses have been against them, really, in the Larry Fedora era. So, now you look at it just about a year and a half later, and we're just left scratching our heads. So, but yeah, man. Hey, thanks for stepping on, man. This was fantastic. I always love to have you on the podcast. One of my favorites for sure, man. You just love to come on here and talk Tar Heel football, and you're so knowledgeable, man. It's awesome.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Anthony. I really enjoy having you on. If anyone else would like to follow me as the season gets underway, my Twitter is @SJDoughton, DOUGHTON. And you can follow Argyle Report. We'll have a couple other writers subbing in and out along with me on the football beat. And Argyle Report is @Argyle Report. If you want to read our stuff, you can go ArgyleReport.com. We have a couple women's soccer stories up, a couple volleyball stories up for those of you that like Olympic sports as well. We do coverage of that and stuff as well. But thanks for having me on, Anthony. I appreciate this, and I can't wait to hear the season preview with everyone else when it comes out.
Yeah, man. Hey, thank you. Yeah, and thanks for stepping on with us. And we'll definitely have to have you on throughout the season to come on and talk about what's going on with the Tar Heels as well, man.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
All right, you too, man.
Jake Lawrence might not be as well known as some of the other names that have stopped by to chat with us, but the Tar Heel blog contributor knows the ins and outs of this Tar Heel team as well as anyone. Last Thursday, he jumped on to tell us what he thinks of this 2018 Tar Heel squad.
How's it going today, Jake?
Hey, man, what's up?
Hey, so, first I want to start by saying, hey, man, I love the stuff you do. The blog is fantastic. It's a great read, and I think anybody that's a Tar Heel fan definitely, needs to invest a little bit of time and read some of this stuff that you guys are putting out over there, because it's fantastic stuff, man.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. I guess I've been doing it now for just over 2 years now. I think I've lost track, but yeah, I mean, we found our footing. Views have been up. People are starting to read, and I got to say, it's a fun deal. We are putting out some really good things, and I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I thought I have a lot of journalists on here, but I think this is going to be one of those ones that I think a lot of people really need to take notice of, because, this is a little bit different. This is somebody with a sort of fan type blog, but at the same time, I feel like you're going to bring a realistic perspective. I think when people hear fan blog, they expect that, that we're going to come out with these opinions that this team's going to win 9 games, that this team's going to win, the ACC Coastal, that we won't say anything bad about these guys. But I mean, I think we can both admit there are some flaws with this team.
Oh, 100%. And we really try to bring a more honest assessment. We have our optimistic views at times, but we have also put out some things that have not been the kindest to various teams or people. I think with some of Fedora's comments earlier this year, we hammer those pretty hard. If people, really want to kind of see where we're coming from a fan perspective, we don't really pull any punches. So, and that goes into this year as well. This year's team does have some flaws. I think there's a lot of reason for hope and optimism, but there's absolutely plenty of reason for concern going into 2018.
So let's start by talking about the offense. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. These are the 5 questions that I've been asking anybody that's done this. And, I just give your honest answers on this. So let's start, with the offense. Last year, the worst statistical year, at least scoring-wise, under Larry Fedora. At this point, this offense, I think, is still trying to find its footing. I feel like this offense is going to be better than it was a year ago. But the thing that, you kind of have to wonder is what has to happen for this offense to get back to that level that they were at 2 years ago, or especially I think what people really want is where they were at back in 2015.
Yeah, I think the first 2 things that come to mind is they cannot turn the ball over and they have to extend their drives. Last year's, especially on third down, last year's conversion rate was abysmal, especially compared to kind of what it has been in years past. They have got to find a way to stay on the field and put themselves in position to score. Even if it's just a couple field goals, there were some empty possessions last year that would have made a difference in some close games, or closer games when people may remember. And then at the quarterback position, Nathan Elliott can come in and just hold on to the football, make the right decisions. You don't need to be explosive plays every time down the field, but you got to be able to eat a little bit of clock and at least keep the ball moving to get some momentum going to kind of keep everyone invested.
I like what you said about third down. I mean, last year I remember seeing the stat after the season was over that our average third down was 3rd and 7. That just can't happen again. I mean, that's not going to set you up for success, and that's going to force a quarterback position that last year was struggling to throw the ball more. That's kind of where we saw our struggles, especially in games like Notre Dame and Georgia Tech, where we didn't end up scoring as much as we would have liked to. This year, yeah, I kind of agree with you, and I hope that the running game is going to be up to par to be able to keep us there. That offensive line is going to be a little more disciplined to avoid penalties that will set us back. So I totally agree. Now looking at the defense, they took a step forward last year. I think there's a little bit of optimism to be had with this defense. The thing is, what do they have to do to take that next step this season?
They have get into the backfield. They've got to get that defensive line and push the offensive line back and win those battles. You know, I hate to be cliche, but they have to win the battles in the trenches. The reason they have struggled against the run and the reason they have struggled against those, you know, the drag routes across the middle and the wheel routes, they're not getting the pressure to force the quarterback into a bad decision or disrupt timing and make them uncomfortable. And I think that's where it starts. You know, they've had decent secondary performances the past few years. They've had some good talent back there. Of course, you know, MJ Stewart is the one. Remember, second-round draft pick last year.
Right.
But they have got to finally have that defensive line actually cause and disrupt the timing at the line and force those opposing offenses into where what you just mentioned last year, we struggled with 3rd and 7s and whatnot.
Right.
We've got to into long position or long passing downs on the later downs of their drives.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's the one area that on paper, it probably looked like these guys really took a step forward getting pressure on the quarterback. But, I mean, when you look at guys like Timon Fox, 3 of his 4 sacks came in one game. So, you know, you got to kind of look game to game and see just how much they were able to get pressure. And I think we're going to find that out right away against Cal. That's going to be something we have to do against the Bears, or else we could be in a little bit of trouble. We know they're going to stand back there and they like to throw the football. So that's crucial out of the gate. We all know that there are these breakout players every single year. This year coming in, there's a couple of guys that are being talked about, you know, guys like Carl Tucker, guys like even CJ Cotman who could start outside at one of the corner positions. Who's the guy that right now nobody's really talking about that you think could be a breakout candidate on this team?
That's really good because it feels like everyone's talked about at some point or another. I'm going to go with Thomas Jackson, though, and I don't know if breakout is the right word, but as a 5th-year senior, last year he was supposed to kind of be that safety blanket with Austin Proehl in the slot. I think you bring someone with his experience back and his ability to run routes and kind of valve across the middle or kind of on a quick out, that opens up the field for everybody else. So I don't know if he's necessarily going to put up the stats per se, but he definitely has the experience within that system. And when you're looking at all of the weapons that come back, and yeah, everyone got experience last year, Nathan Elliott's going to have someone he can rely on. He's going to have someone who knows that offense cold. And I think Thomas Jackson is the guy that you can look at being solid week in and week out, and is going to be a safety blanket as the year goes on.
Yeah, I really like Thomas Jackson. I thought he had a good start to last year. He had 7 receptions, but 2 of them were for touchdowns last year. So he did get off to a good start before he got hurt against Old Dominion. So, yeah, that's a good one. That's one that no one's really talking about. Everybody's kind of sticking really on the defensive side of the ball. So that's definitely an interesting one. I really like that. So right now, sitting here today, what is your official record prediction for this team? If you had to look at that schedule and kind of narrow it down, what do you have us at right now?
I, honest to goodness, have them at 8-4 for multiple reasons. And so,
okay.
We talked about not being your typical fan blog and all that, but looking at it, I really think 8-4 is something that is attainable and should be expected this year. I won't be disappointed with the 7-5, but I think 8-4 is what we need to be looking at. And I think the schedule kind of lends itself to having that kind of optimism.
If you don't mind me asking, what do you have us starting in the first 4 games where we're going to be without the 11 players?
I think we end up 3-1 there. I honest to goodness think that we end up beating Cal.
Okay.
And then you come back across the country of ECU in what? Look, if they lose at ECU, then there are some serious concerns that we need to have when we start having some serious discussions.
Totally agree. Yep.
I think UCF is a toss-up, and I can see us losing that game just because, yeah, they lost their coach and they lost some defensive talent, but they still have a really good quarterback. And I think that's where you might start seeing some of the depth issues from the suspensions when we come back for UCF. But then I feel good against Pitt. Fedora's never lost against Pitt. Right. And and I feel good about them coming down. Pitt is what they are, and their style of play, I don't think it's going to be a barn burner, but I think it's a game that to open up the ACC season, I think that's a game that they end up stealing. And the reason I'm so high on the Cal game is that when you look at the suspensions, it's clear that the coaching staff used that as a big deal because they staggered it to have Fox and Carney both available for that game. So that tells me that coaching staff and the players are viewing that game as close to a must-win as you could have early in the season. And so I think that they're coming out to really set the tone against the Bears.
Yeah, so pretty much if you got them going 8-4, this question really, I think I know the answer. Do you think Larry Fedora is the head coach of this team when we start the season in 2019?
I think if he makes a bowl, he's the head coach going into 2019.
All right. Yeah,
and
I can agree.
And the major reason there is that, look, the 2019 recruiting class is not really going to be that great. We get it. They're going to make up some ground. That's fine.
Right.
They are really laying the groundwork for 2020, and they're going to have enough talent that comes back for 2019 that they should realistically be challenging for 8 to 10 wins in 2019. And so I don't think you blow all that up for a bowl appearance. Anything less than that, I think that's a real conversation to have.
All right, yeah, I totally agree. I think that's kind of where we're at, and I agree. Getting to a bowl game, I think, would probably be what would keep him in Chapel Hill.
The final journalist that we had stop by actually jumped on with us this morning, but it was well worth the wait. Pat James of GoHeels.com has been writing about Tar Heel sports for a few years now, and his extensive knowledge of the team allowed us to get the answers to some key questions before this weekend's matchup with Cal.
We welcome in Pat James from GoHeels.com. Hey, Pat, how's it going, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Hey, first of all, I want to apologize for the last time. All the technical difficulties, that was unbelievable, but I think we have it solved, so we should be good to go today. But Pat's not going to be able to give us a season prediction like some of the other guys have, but maybe we can get him to answer our first couple of questions, and we're also going to ask him a couple of other things. So first of all, I got to start by asking, we've reached this point now where it's Thursday before game day, and we don't have a depth chart. At this point, I think it's pretty much inevitable that we are not going to have one. The coaching staff is really just going to roll without one. Do you know really a reason why they're going without one? And, are there still, do we have enough information based on what we've seen in camp to kind of put together a roster, as fans ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, from what Fedora said on Monday, I feel like this is really the only reason, and I think it makes sense. I guess in the sense that, he just doesn't want to give, the opponent, like he doesn't want him to know as much about the team as he does, which, you've seen several other coaches, especially, specifically in college football, like Jim Harbaugh, kind of use that same reasoning in the past, and I think that's probably going to become something that's even more common throughout college football over the next 2 or 3 years probably. But in regards to your other question, though, I think at this point, I feel like those who've been following along and stuff, that the depth chart is going to be much different than what has been discussed after recent practices and throughout camp. I feel like the big question mark that is on everybody's mind is who's going to be starting their right guard. And at this point, I would probably as of today, I would lean toward being Billy Ross. I don't know about that for sure, but that'd be my guess as of right now.
And with that battle right there, is there a really good chance that we're probably going to see both of them getting rotated in and out?
I think there is probably a pretty good chance. Fedora, he said the other day how he definitely expects William Barnes to play at least some on Saturday in one way or another. I would expect to see both of them out there probably at some point on Saturday.
There was another battle that I was kind of focusing on coming into fall camp, and I'm wondering how you feel that it's turned out, and that's that number 2 cornerback position. Patrice Renee and C.J. Cotman seem to be the two guys battling back and forth there. Is there really any clearance at that position right now as we go into the season, or is that going to be similar to that right guard spot where both of them will probably play a significant amount of snaps?
Yeah, I'd probably lean that direction in terms of them both playing a significant number of snaps. If I were to say who's starting, if there's only two of them are out there to start on the first series or whatever, first play, my guess is that it would be C.J. Cottman. That'd be my guess as of right now. But especially as of late, there's been a lot of talk about Patrice Renee, and I mean, Miles Doran was talking last week about how it kind of finally seems like he's learned how to use that size a little bit more to his advantage. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as we all know, because of that size, he has the skills where he could really be, a really good quarterback. It's just kind of refining those skills and trying to find out how to use them. And it's kind of tough because he comes in as a true freshman, and there's that game against Georgia, and I just feel like that's everyone's lasting impression of him, that season opener. Right. And hopefully he can shake that this year.
On the offensive side of the ball, the last time we talked about Dyami Brown pretty much being a shoo-in to start. Now on the defensive side of the ball, we've got a guy that's pretty much a shoo-in to start. Now it is at the nickel cornerback position, but Trey Morrison seems to be that guy that's going to start there. Do you think that at this point it's pretty much him and Bryson Richardson? And my question really is, where is Miles Woolfolk fitting into this, the guy that started at that nickel position last year?
Yeah, I think it definitely is at this point. Trey Morrison has the edge over all of them. He's been so impressive. The coaching staff has obviously talked about him a lot just since camp began and everything. But he's also, when I've been out there, he's always making plays during practices and scrimmages. And the other day when I asked Fedora just kind of about last year when he was talking about MJ Stewart, he always mentioned how, MJ was always the top guy on the GPS chart every day. He was always the one who was going the hardest. Right. And he said there's not one specific guy holding that down, but he did mention Trey Morrison as one of the 3 or 4 guys who's always at the top every single day. So, to have that as a true freshman, I think that's big. And I think he's going to make a significant impact this year. And then, as you mentioned, Miles Woolfolk, that's an interesting one as well. When he's been out there during practices, he has been out there making plays. I really don't know exactly how they're planning on using him this year, but we saw last year some flashes from him, and I think that he could have a big role on this team.
Yeah, 2 interceptions last year, was tied for the lead on the team. So yeah, they've got you would think that a role is there for him. There are 2 significant injuries heading into this game. Michael Carter will not play, and neither will Aaron Crawford. When you look at both of those injuries, how do you think that the Heels are able to adjust at those positions?
I'm sure this has been talked about enough, but those 2 positions specifically, to have the depth they have at those 2 spots is definitely, a massive help. Those are probably the 2 deepest position groups on the team. I think at defensive tackle, you're probably looking at, Jason Strobridge, who has been probably the most talked about, one of the most talked about players on the defensive side of the ball. He's going to be in for a significant role. Him, probably Jalen Doughton if he's a full go on Saturday, which I'm not sure about at this point. But you have some other depth there as well. And then running back, I would personally probably expect Antonio Williams to be the first running back that UNC uses. And as Fedora said on Monday, it's probably going to be a 3-man rotation between him and Jordan Brown and Javonte Williams. And as everybody's been talking about, Javonte Williams has been just incredible so far with the way he's acclimated to the college game. And I think that he's going to have as much of a significant year as he can have as a true freshman in such a crowded running back group.
Yeah. Pat James at GoHeels.com, I got to give you credit. You called it the last time you were on the show. You thought Cade Fortin was going to be that guy that emerged at that backup position, and you got that right. It's dead on. Yesterday they announced that he is going to be the backup quarterback. I think what most people are kind of wondering is, as you look kind of forward in these next 4 games, how much of a role do you actually think that he's going to play? Do you think he's going to be able to get in against ECU, or right now is he really just that guy that's kind of the insurance guy?
I would definitely lean towards the latter, towards being the insurance guy. Mm-hmm. I think that as long as Nathan Elliott is healthy and that he doesn't have to go out for anything major like injury or helmet pops off or anything like that, right. I think that's the only way that Cade Fortin gets out there. But he's been highly impressive so far. You can definitely tell being around him a little bit in the spring until now, like you can tell that he just seems a lot more comfortable out there. And so, I mean, I think that was kind of evident to the coaching staff as well. And he's definitely progressed a lot. And I think he's definitely earned that backup role for these first couple games.
All right, so I'm going to ask you the first three questions. I'll stay away from the record prediction and everything like that. But I'll start with the offense. You know, last year was a struggle for sure on offense. I mean, just 26 points per game. The offense averaged under 370 yards of total offense. You know, my question is, how do they get back to being an offense that can win this team games, or at least, you know, give this team a chance to win some of those close games?
I think it all starts with the running game. I mean, as good as it was at times last year, you just need that consistent production to, be able to keep the defense off its toes and everything. And I think, they have the backs to do it. Will be obviously the most important is whether the offensive line can hold up in terms of creating those lanes and everything. And as of right now, I would say I feel pretty confident they are, probably more so than I did last year at this point. Obviously, there were some returning pieces last year, more returning pieces than there are on this year's offensive line. But I've been pretty impressed with a lot of those guys up front. I mean, Charlie Heck specifically is a guy who has been drawing like rave reviews, especially the past couple of days. I think it was J.K. Britt the other day who said that he thinks that Charlie Heck's going to be a first-round draft pick at some point. So, I mean, I think that's where it starts with the running game. Another thing that I think you have this year, I mean, obviously you had Ant last year, Anthony Ratliff-Williams, the way he was able to extend the field, with the deep ball. But also now you have Diami on the other side, just their speed together, just the ability to stretch the field horizontally as well as vertically. I just think that's going to open a lot more layers up in the defense and stuff. And I think that it'll allow this offense to be a lot more effective, especially when you have a guy like Nathan Elliott. He's talked about, how he's improved on the deep ball so much. And he definitely has, just from when I've been around him and watched him during practices. He definitely seems like he has improved in that area. And with him being able to hit those short throws, those intermediate routes as well as he does, I think that'll allow this offense to be a lot more dynamic and kind of open up a little bit more than it was last year.
For most of last year, it seemed like the defense was taking a step in the right direction. Towards the end of the year, I think the run defense tailed off just a little bit. But overall, I still think it was a step in the right direction. How does this defense take another step in the right direction and become a unit that, if they are needed to win a game or two here and there, they can get that job done?
I think it does all start up front on that side as well, on the defensive line. I mean, obviously it's an experienced group on that defensive line. And I feel like a lot of those guys, they've heard all those questions. I mean, it's been a common question surrounding UNC football for at least, I don't know how many years, but a lot in a row. Just about whether that team can hold up in the running game and defending the run. And I think I've noticed it more with this year's group about how maybe like they're kind of ready to, rid themselves of that narrative. And I think that obviously there's a lot of guys who have a lot to prove on this team after last year, and they're very, driven by what happened last year. But I think that D-line specifically is ready kind of to really step up this year. And it's been common talk for a while now, so we'll have to see if it happens. But, it hurts, not having Aaron Crawford out there. But I think, a guy like I mentioned, Jason Strobridge, Jalen Dalton, if he's healthy. And I think that line is something that can, really make or break, how this defense performs as a whole this season. The linebackers themselves, I know there's a lot of questions surrounding them. But I think that as long as that defensive line is kind of giving them that room to kind of move around space, I think that they're going to hold up well as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, and I think that's kind of where it starts. You're right, up front for sure. You look at some of the guys that have headlined fall camp, and it's really been the big names, guys like Anthony Ratliff-Williams, Antonio Williams as well. But who is that breakout guy that right now really a lot of people aren't talking about, but you feel by the end of the year, people will know that person's name?
It's kind of tough because all the people who I would typically mention are starting to get their attention this week. But I would definitely say, his name's been thrown around here and there over the past couple of weeks. But one of the guys who's probably impressed me the most in terms of under the radar, I guess, is Jeremiah Gemmel. I've been very impressed by him. It'll be interesting to see what sort of role he has, because I feel like, we kind of have an understanding as of right now of who those three starting linebackers are going to be. With Dominique Ross getting probably the majority of the snaps ahead of Gemmel. But, Gemmel has been highly impressive to me, especially it's amazing just kind of to watch him in pass coverage, just the way he's able to move around the field. I mean, he's so athletic, and Dominic Ross, he was actually talking to me yesterday about just, his abilities in pass coverage, like just how much better he's gotten over the past year as he's kind of acclimated to his surroundings and everything after the redshirt year last year. So he's a guy who I'm extremely high on, and if I were to list two other ones, I mean, the two guys who I've been talking about for a while now, but who have really been drawing a lot of rave reviews recently, have been Javonte Williams and Jason Strowbridge. I think both of them are in for really big years. I mean, Jason Strowbridge, he's up about 20 to 25 pounds, and the thing that's just so crazy about it is, he's so much bigger, but he's still just as explosive as he was last year before that. So I think that he's going to have a really big role along that defensive line.
Yeah, I really like that Gemmel pick right there because I've seen, tons of photos and videos of him in practice just doing a great job in pass coverage like you mentioned, and I've heard his tackling is staying up to speed. So, yeah, he could have a good impact as that rotational linebacker. So, I won't go into any of the other season prediction things. So, I know, are you flying out to Berkeley today or tomorrow?
I am not going out there. I'm actually going to be holding down in here this weekend for some UNC volleyball, but I'll be at ECU next Saturday for sure.
All right, Pat, sounds great, man. So I know we're all looking forward to the season. It's only 2 days away, and that's amazing. So I want to thank you for coming on, and as always, man, you're invited anytime back that you want to come back on.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me on, man.
All right, yeah, man. You take care. All right.
You too.
To close out this season preview edition of the podcast, we turn to the host of the Heel Tough Blog podcast, Zack Hubbard, who joined me earlier this year as my co-host when we started the Heel Tough Blog podcast, jumped on as both him and I give our predictions for what we foresee in this upcoming season for the Tar Heels.
I'll ask you these questions that I've asked every other guest that we've had on, that you guys have heard me ask every other guest, earlier in this podcast. And it starts, we looked at last year's offense. The numbers were nowhere near what we've seen in the past, especially for a Larry Fedora-led offense. My question to you is, what does this team have to do to return to that offense that maybe not necessarily was, they don't have to be as good as the 2015 group, I don't think. But what do they have to do to return to that offense that you can feel confident can win games for you?
I think that the biggest thing for me offensively is diversity. This 2018 UNC offense has got to both run and pass the football effectively as to not become one-dimensional, because I think that in various times last year that could become an issue, and in various times in the past, and for other teams, that becomes an issue. I mean, as a general idea, you want to be able to do multiple things on offense as not to kind of put yourself in a box. I think that is ultimately important for this UNC team, not only to keep the defense honest, but also because this, as I said, this team has tons of talent, both that will help in the run game and in the pass game at the running backs and at the wide receivers. So I think that they have to find ways to let your skilled players make plays, and that's going to happen through diversity of play calling, by diversity of kind of approach to how the offense works. I think that they're going to have to throw in some kind of unique sets in this year. One thing that I really like that you mentioned were the two running back sets. I think that's a great idea. They did a little bit of it last year, but I'd like to see a little bit more of it this year, a little bit more consistently used by this offense.
Right.
I think you're going to see those two running back sets. I think you're going to see four wide receiver sets. And I think that those are all good ways that UNC can give defense a variety of looks that doesn't allow defenses to settle in and get comfortable with anything. I think that that's the main focus for UNC's offense, is to make opposing defenses uncomfortable.
So then you turn away from the offensive side of the ball and you look at the defensive side of the ball. Look, this unit as a whole, I thought took a step forward last year. Now, there were some concerns with the passing defense, which, kind of sort of regressed just a little bit, but I think the run defense showed some signs of having that ability to, sort of contain the run game, which they were not able to do in 2015 and 16. You look at it this year, how does this defense take that next step towards becoming a unit that could at least, win this team a game or two?
I think the two things that this defense has to do, two things that in my mind are tied for most important, and these are things that defenses generally have to do, is that the defense has to create what people in the industry and people that look at advanced statistics called havoc plays. Those are tackles for loss, those are sacks, those are turnovers, those are passes deflected. They have to affect plays more than just being out there and being a body on the field. They have to make the offense make mistakes. I think that that's key, and that's something that the defense was somewhat lacking last year. There was not many turnovers. There were tackles for loss and there were sacks, but you would like to see an increase in that. There were not. There were passes deflected, as we mentioned, specifically from MJ Stewart and KJ Sales. But then that leads to my next point, is that this defense cannot allow as many what the UNC defensive staff calls catastrophic plays, which are offensive plays that are, I believe, over 35 yards. They cannot have those because those killed the defense last year. And those kill your momentum in games. I mean, once you give up plays that big, you've essentially allowed all the momentum to go to your opponent's offense. And if they don't score on that play, it's very likely that after a play like that they score on that drive. So those two things is really creating sort of disruption overall in the defense and then not allowing those big plays. I think those are the two keys for the UNC defense this year.
So now, let's turn to the breakout player, because everybody's talking about Anthony Ratliff-Williams. Everybody's been talking about guys like Antonio Williams. Who is the guy that really at this point nobody's really talking about, but you've kind of looked at on, maybe, through some of the other journalists, or really just looked at on this roster and said, you know what, I think he's going to have a big impact and people are going to know his name by the end of the year?
Well, because people are certainly talking about the starting wide receivers and the starting running backs, I'm going to go, I think, for three potential guys that I would see as breakout players on this offense. And those would be true freshman running back Javonte Williams, and then two offensive linemen in William Sweet and J.J. McCargo. Javonte Williams has gotten nothing but praise from this UNC staff this offseason as a true freshman that has come in and really has shown maturity and has learned the playbook and adds another element to this running game. But I think more likely the breakout players we see are two guys that had to leave last year due to injury, but had very promising sort of games when they were playing, were William Sweet at left tackle and J.J. McCargo at center. I think those are two guys that you can see really make a name for themselves in the ACC this year, and then really push for that sort of all ACC or NFL potential in the future. I think, like you mentioned, I think William Sweet, though he's not had a lot of playing time, he's shown that I believe, and I think you believe as well, that this could be an NFL guy. He certainly has all the measurables in terms of what you like to see from an NFL offensive tackle. He certainly shows he can be rangy, he can move, he's got good feet. So I think probably William Sweet or J.J. McCargo are going to be your breakout players on offense.
So then, you turn and you look. I don't know if you're a guy that's a record prediction type guy. I'm one of those guys. I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, nah, we don't do that. We don't do those record predictions. I know, one of the most hated men in sports radio, Colin Cowherd, is like that. But, I'm one of those guys. If you're not, just kind of give me what is your record, or what is your, win total look like for this team this year?
My win total for this year, I would say that UNC is probably either within the range of a 5 or 8 win team. I think there is going to be improvement from last year. my record as of right now is what I would predict is probably about 7-5 for this UNC team.
Okay.
Probably about 5-3 within the conference, which would be good by my predictions for about third in the Coastal, which is really what you like to see after being,
right.
I believe we were 6th or 7th last year. So I think there will certainly be improvement. I don't think that it's going to be a come from behind, 8 or 9 win season, but I do think that UNC will be a bowl team this year. I think that they're going to have, some good wins to build on for the future. I think that Larry Fedora will kind of reestablish himself after kind of what is a mulligan year last year with all the injuries, mainly because he has to. I mean, if you look at how people have discussed it, and I don't know really how the administration's feeling is about it, and certainly with the buyout that he has, but there has been talk about Larry having somewhat of a hot seat and the idea of, well, is he the right guy for this job? And I think that kind of the barrier for him this year is going to be bowl eligibility, and I think he makes that. And really, I think that this year is a transitional year to build to the future. If you look at this team, it's got a fair amount of young up-and-comers on it, either freshmen or redshirt freshmen or sophomores that I think can be really good players down the line. So, not an 8 or 9 win, certainly not a coastal contender, at least from what we're seeing right now, but a solid team in the Coastal, probably right there in the middle, and then probably, hopefully, a solid bowl team.
Well, you went into it a little bit right there, but it's the final question that I have on here, and I kind of want a yes or no answer here. At the start of the 2019 season, basically where we're sitting at today, do you think Larry Fedora is the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels?
Well, based on my prediction, I'll just go into more detail, I guess, about my prediction for UNC, just to give some context to that.
Right.
I have them going 7-5. I have them beating ECU and Western. Those are kind of the easier games on the schedule. And then in terms of those 5 losses, I have them losing to Cal. I have them losing to Miami. I have them losing to Virginia Tech. I have them losing to UCF, and then finally, and dare I say, unfortunately, I have them losing to NC State. But I do have them getting wins against a pretty decent Syracuse team, UVA, Pitt, a pretty decent Georgia Tech team, and then, of course, Duke, which is at least one of the in-state teams. So do I think this is going to be the ideal year for Carolina fans? I probably would not say that, but I do think that there will be various aspects within the season that UNC fans can hang their hat on and say, there is improvement. This is not the team that is a 3-9 clunker in the ACC Coastal. This is still a team that is building year after year after year to hopefully contend for an ACC Coastal Division title like we did in the past couple of years. So I think this is about a mid-level team, probably third or fourth in the ACC Coastal. Not any sort of national contender, not an 8 or 9 win team, but not a bad team either. And I think that what UNC really needs to prepare for is hopefully to win that bowl game. I think that that's going to be huge. UNC hasn't won a bowl game since 2013, so that's absolutely enormous that they get over that hump. And then, of course, the 2 in-state games against Duke and NC State are big. I think they go about 1-1 in those. Hopefully they go 2-0. I think the biggest thing for this season is that a lot of the games that they play are single-score games. There's probably about 2 games on this season that I see being more than 2-score games decided by it. Those would probably be UCF and Miami, just based on the talent they have. But pretty much every other game is within a score, close games, single-digit games. So it's certainly not impossible that UNC goes 8-4. It would be great if they did. I am not really ready to make that prediction right now. I'm going to go with 7-5. But I think that UNC fans should be happy with 7-5 because I think that the talent and the way that the team is set up now is built towards kind of that, ACC Coastal runs in 2019 and 2020 as we saw with the 2015 and 2016 teams.
All right, yeah. So great stuff from Zack. I'll let you go, man. It's getting pretty late, so yeah. But great stuff, man, and good stuff to hear about this team this year. I think everybody can hear it. You are excited about this team, as are we, and I think we're just ready to get it underway.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, man. All right, so So we heard from Zack there, and now, I'm going to give you my prediction, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to do each question by question. You look and you start out, like I said, what is this, how does this offense get back to the level that it was? How does it get back to a level of a team that is, able to win games? When I look at it, I think it starts with the running game. There's so much talent here. Run that football. Run it to open up that passing game, especially that deep passing game. And see, that's my other key. I think there's two keys. I should have probably let off with that, but there are two keys to this team returning to that level. Running the football successfully. Michael Carter, Jordan Brown are going to lead that unit, but with Antonio Williams, with a guy like Javonte Williams who has broken out as well, it's important for this unit to have success running the football. That starts up front with the offensive line. The offensive line has to get the job done. I feel that they've got the talent, and I feel that they can do it. It's just, getting out there and actually putting what you've done so far in the fall to work. And I think if they are able to do that, that will open up the passing game. It will also give this team what they haven't had in a while, which is a good running game. They really haven't had that outside of the 2015 year. It's pretty hard to think of a year that they've had a great running game without Giovanni Bernard or the 1 year with Elijah Hood. So, to be able to have that with the amount of depth that they would have would be humongous. I think the deep passing game is important, as I said, because really since Matt Collins has left, it has not been there. And that was one of the greatest things about that 2015 and early 2016 offense, is that you had the ability to take the top off of defenses, which opened up that shorter passing game for you. Allowed guys like Ryan Switzer, like Bug Howard, like Quinshaw Davis to be effective because defenses knew that you couldn't bring your safeties up to try to protect against that short passing game because Matt Collins would burn you over the top, or even Bug Howard occasionally would burn you over the top. They really haven't had that this last year and a half, and they've got to find that guy. I think Diami Brown could be that guy. I think Antone Green could potentially be that guy as well. If they are able to find that guy, I think this offense can return to a group that can not only win this team games, I think if they're able to find that deep passing guy, they can return to a team that could score 34 or 35 points a game, which would be immaculate. When you turn to the defensive side of the ball, as I said, it took a step last year. I thought at least in the run game it did. In the passing game, it took a little bit of a step backwards, but overall, I think it was a step forward for the defense. In order to take that next step, this team has to be able to rush the passer, number one. That's what's going to start everything. That's what's going to make everything go smoothly. Getting after the passer or being effective in that run defense. Those guys in the middle have to be able to force that ball to the outside, force that ball carrier to the edge, make those linebackers make the tackles. I think there is some talent there, especially tackling-wise in that linebacking core. It's just, you've got to be able to set them up in situations where they're able to drop guys for a loss, talking about those havoc plays like Zack mentioned earlier. But in the passing game, you got to be able to get pressure. It's going to be on guys like Malik Carney when he's available, Timon Fox when he's available, Tyrone Hopper when he's available, Alan Cater, Tyler Powell. Some of these guys, maybe even on the interior, guys like Jalen Doughton who showed that ability to rush the passer from the defensive tackle position. You got to get after the passer, make these quarterbacks uncomfortable, make them have to make superstar plays. I mean, that's kind of what you've got to do, especially in the ACC. And the quarterbacks that the Tar Heels are facing this year are not it's not the toughest slate that you could have to deal with. So if you get after the passer, I'm telling you, things will go their way. And number 2 is going to be to create turnovers. This team has seemed to lose the ability to create turnovers ever since that 2015 team. That was what they did so well. That 11-win team was just able to turn the ball over so many times, especially in crucial moments. They have lost that ability the last 2 years. 2016, 1 interception the entire season. Last year, 7. Not the greatest number, but an improvement. This year, I want to see that number reach double digits. Or if you're not going to intercept the ball, cause fumbles. You've got to create turnovers because, especially back in 2016, Mitch Trubisky did such a great job taking care of the football. The entire team did such a great job of taking care of the football, and the team still lost the turnover battle. Trubisky threw single-digit interceptions, and they still lost that turnover battle. With as much as Mitch Trubisky threw the ball, that is head-scratching, to say the least. They've got to be able to turn the football over. If they do, it will not only set this offense up in great position, you can potentially score points on defense that can help your team to win some of those close games that Zack talked about. I turn to my breakout player. As I've said, the big names, we've heard all the guys that have been mentioned so far on this podcast. I'm going with a completely different guy from everybody else. Although I like everybody else's pick, the guy that I think has the breakout season this year and goes off, I think, is J.K. Britt. That is my guy, the strong safety who's going to start this year. He showed a little bit of it last year. This is finally his job. He will have a sensational year. Mark it down right now. I am saying he will at least be an All-ACC second-team player at the strong safety position. I love everything about J.K. Britt. I think he is a fantastic tackler, very similar to what we saw from Donnie Miles. But the difference between Donnie Miles and J.K. Britt is that J.K. Britt has the ability to play as that deep protection safety, something we did not see from Donnie Miles. He's going to have those ball skills that are going to be necessary to be a pass coverage safety. And I don't think Donnie Miles really had that the last couple of years. I think teams knew they could pick a little bit on Donnie Miles. And that's not to say anything bad about Donnie Miles, because I thought Donnie Miles was a great player for Carolina. I just think that J.K. Britt is at a little bit of a different level, and he will have that breakout season for the Tar Heels. Turning to the official record prediction, I will go game by game for you guys and kind of break down where exactly I see this team. You look, of course, with the first game against Cal on the road at California. I don't think it's going to be easy. I look at it as right now, it could be close, but I would lean probably Cal. On the road at ECU, I'm gonna go with us beating ECU, even though we've had our struggles against them. I don't think this game is gonna be as big of a blowout as a lot of people think, but I think we get to 1-1. Central Florida, a big game at home to start the season, a game that I feel is going to have a fantastic environment because of the special that they put on the seats back a couple of weeks ago, $23 seats. I'm telling you, that game is going to be raucous. I think these guys are ready to go. This crowd is ready to go. I think it's going to be really interesting as a home opener. Central Florida is extremely talented. It's a close game, but I probably have to go with Central Florida. Pittsburgh at home on the 22nd. Larry has not lost to Pittsburgh since they've entered the ACC. He will not lose to Pittsburgh this time either, getting the team to 2-2. Turning to the 27th, just 5 days after that Pitt game, the team goes on the road to Miami. While they have had a lot of success against Miami, that's been one of the teams that Larry has always given fits to, including last season. Miami, I think, is just a little bit too talented, and I would probably lean Miami, especially on the short week. Then we have a bye week before we welcome in Virginia Tech on October 13th. Tough game. Virginia Tech is an extremely talented team, although I think this game will be closer than some of the last few meetings that we've seen outside of the 2015 season when we went on the road and beat them in Blacksburg. I think this one's close, but I would probably lean Virginia Tech because I do think that they are the team that is the biggest threat to Miami in the Coastal. Then we go on the road at Syracuse, a game that I kind of was back and forth on, but I think is going to be the crucial point of the season for the Tar Heels. At this point, I have them sitting at 2-4. I would say they win on the road at Syracuse against Eric Dungy and the Orange. I think the defense for Syracuse won't be enough to contain this offense for Carolina, and this could be the point of the schedule where the Tar Heels get rolling. At Virginia, I think we are miles more talented than Virginia. I don't think Virginia is really that good at all. According to their head coach, they're not. He says there's only 27 ACC caliber players on the entire team. I think on the road there, yeah, they beat us in our place last year, but I've got a feeling that this year will be a little bit different. That's one of those teams that we will want to get revenge on, and I think we do. 4-4, we head back home to face Georgia Tech. Larry has really picked it up against Georgia Tech after we had that stretch with the Butch Davis era and the early Larry era where we just weren't able to beat them. I think this defense has what it takes to beat them, and I'm actually going to take us to beat them because I think if we are able to slow down that run, it will force them to pass the football, and Taquan Marshall is not a good passer of the football. I think we are able to slow down the run enough. I think this offense hits a little bit of a rhythm by that point, and I think we get to 5-4. I then turn to the Duke game on the road at Duke. A tough place to go in and play. We've had so many close calls against that team. I look at it right now. I like what our team does against them. I think we're able to match up well with them, but that's one of those games where I just don't know at this point if we're able to pull out the victory because of the coach on the other sideline. I'm actually going to give the win, unfortunately, to the Duke Blue Devils because I think David Cutcliffe has that coaching edge in that game, although I think that will be very close, and you better believe on game week I will probably be predicting that we will beat them. Western Carolina at home, I think it's an easy victory just like last year. That's the one game on the schedule that I am comfortable saying will be a complete blowout. I think every other game has the potential to be a little bit close, even that ECU game as I mentioned. And then at home against State, we come in with a 6-5 record. I think we beat the NC State Wolfpack at home. It's been a monkey that's kind of been on Larry Fedora's back here these last couple of years. And this year, I think it will be a lot different. I think the emotions will be running high. Dave Doran is a guy that has, from what we've seen, he's been running his mouth over there in Raleigh. And at this point, I think Larry Fedora and this team will be fired up. I'm going to give the win to the Tar Heels, and I think they finish the season 7-5. They will go to a bowl game. And I think there, we will have to wait and see who the opponent is. But the fact that they do reach a bowl game, I think will be enough to keep Larry Fedora around. I think at the start of the 2019 season, Larry Fedora is, in fact, the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. But if he does not reach a bowl game, if he does go 5-7 or below that, Larry Fedora, I think, could be on his way out of Chapel Hill.
Thank you for listening to the Heel Tough Blog Podcast Season Preview Edition. I want to thank all of the journalists who took time out of their busy schedules to give you guys some of the best insight about the team we love. Check out the California preview with Zack and I, which should be up sometime on Thursday or Friday, and the position-by-position breakdown Part 2 with myself and Zack, which should be posted within the same time frame. Also, keep an eye out for an interview with Jeff Greenberg of Under the Headset and Inside the ACC, who is unfortunately not able to get on in time for this episode, but will hop on with us to talk some Tar Heel football before the season starts. As always, subscribe to the podcast on Spreaker, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, the TuneIn app, or TuneIn.com. Check out the blog on Medium.com. Just type in Heel Tough Blog. That will do it for this season preview edition of the podcast. Thank you once again for listening, and as always, go Tar Heels!